What's up everyone, welcome back to my series Ranked, where I talk about an artist or a band's discography or else singles and rank them from worst to best. As with any list, any countdown ever, it is going to be biased, it is going to be personal opinion, and it is going to be my personal opinion at that. So take it for what you will whenever you're watching this list. There's no such thing as a definitive ranking, even though some would argue their asses off that there is. Today, I'm going to be talking about the popular nu metal transition to rock and pop band Linkin Park. They just put out their most recent album, One More Light. It definitely was polarizing to fans, including myself in a way, but I'm going to weigh in on every album, give my take on it, and let you know why I put it at that spot. At this point in their career, they have released 7 studio albums, so I will be ranking every single studio album from worst to best. As with any of my episodes, I do not count compilations, EPs normally, or anything like that, and if I ever make an exception, I'll definitely let you know. So let me know your ranking in the comment section down below. Don't forget to leave a like on this video today, and let's kick it off with my very first pick, the worst Linkin Park album.
I scream at myself when there's nobody else to fight. I don't lose, I don't win. If I'm wrong, then I'm halfway right.
Most fans were devastated when they heard the new direction Linkin Park were taking their music in, and while this is easily their worst album they've ever put out into the world, it's not without its redeeming qualities. Bands evolve and change over time. Fine, it's a tough thing to accept sometimes, but are you truly surprised that Linkin Park, of all bands, changed their sound so drastically? They've continued shifting their sound over the years, and while One More Light is blatantly pop, it really doesn't seem that unusual to me. Does it fit them really at all? No, not particularly. They've kinda lost their identity with some of the album's songs, feeling like they could have been created by anyone. The reason I say it's not unusual to me is that I've learned to stop expecting 1, 2, or even 3 sounds from Linkin Park. They're gonna do whatever the hell they want, and they're gonna stand by the product they make. This time around, it just happened to be commercially friendly pop and rock, and some of the songs are actually quite good if you, 1, stop trying so hard to hate them because they're pretty basic, and 2, give them a chance in a live setting. They're actually sounding pretty nice so far. If you want rock on this album, well, cue up Talking to Myself, or straight up pop, Heavy, Invisible, right up your alley. Anything else falls somewhere in between those two. I think a lot of the sounds on this record do sound like cheap, radio-friendly nonsense, but who am I to write off an entire band for doing something that they, at least at the time, felt passionate about? Shinoda's songs for his kids, and even the album cover, have a story that they clearly wanted to tell. I learned my lesson after 1,000 Suns with Linkin Park, a project that truly turned me on my head in terms of how I thought about it years later. It's a phase, and Linkin Park will continue on through until the next one. It's not a career ender.
When you can't put gas in your tank, these fuckers are laughing away to the bank and cashing a check, asking you to have compassion and have some respect for a leader so nervous in an obvious way, stuttering and mumbling for nightly news to replay, and the rest of the world watching at the end of the day in their living room laughing like, what did he say?
If you thought this band were new to being called sellouts, you definitely were not around to hear the backlash surrounding Minutes to Midnight, especially whenever pop-sounding singles like Shadow of the Day and Leave Out All the Rest started infiltrating the airwaves. As the band themselves acknowledged, this could have been a career ender. It's an album that had a somewhat drastic shift in tone and overall sound. Instead, it sold over 500,000 copies in its first week, charted songs on both pop and rock radio, and seemed to please the masses outside of the rabid fans that were itching for Meteora Part 2. The reason this album ranks so close to the bottom of my list has to do with what I just mentioned. It tries to please too many people, and as a result, the songs are inconsistent and sometimes shift jarringly from track to track. On the other side of the spectrum, some of my favorite Linkin Park songs, some absolute gems, are right here on Minutes to Midnight. The band's embrace of politics in their music is commendable, criticizing our, at the time, fearless leader, George W. Bush, for the way he handled things such as war and disaster, and Hurricane Katrina specifically. I recently mentioned this in a video I did on underrated Linkin Park songs, but I'll say it again for anybody who may have missed that. The Little Things Give You Away is truly a feat for this band. It's slow and meticulous in its beginnings, secretly furious with its political message, and outstanding as a whole as it morphs into something wildly different from its humble beginnings. Other unique songs include the Ode to Chester Bennington's father, Valentine's Day, and vocals stand out in pieces, and also, who could forget the multi-perspective Hands Held High, which still has some of the best rapping skill and potency from Mike Shinoda to date. Even some of the songs that I really admire here still feel as though they lack something sometimes whenever I listen to it, so I do not always find myself gravitating to it as much as some of their other records, hence the reason it's landed at number 6.
Let tomorrow have its way. Let the promises betray. Skin the bone and steal the rust. Skin the bone and steal the rust.
2012 was a year of escapism for Linkin Park. Kind of an, alright, we got the politics, sampling, and extreme experimentation out of our system. Let's go back to whatever we did in the first place. Being mad and being hurt! I know some would use that as an insult against them, but coming from a big fan, I get why some people just cannot get into them. I personally find a lot of their songs to be very relatable, and the songwriting on Living Things was actually really solid for an electronic-leaning rock release. While 1,000 Suns had its hits, I don't think it really scratched that itch they had for a rock or crossover hit like their past work did, although Waiting for the End was kind of a sleeper hit from that record. You couldn't turn off the radio in 2012 without stumbling onto Burn It Down from this record. It brought back more of the traditional Chester sings then Mike does some rapping thing that fans love, so of course they latched onto this one. That's honestly one of the weaker songs here though. The beauty lies in the deep cuts like the soaring In My Remains, gentle and comforting Roads Untraveled, and synth turntable combo Tinfoil and Powerless as the emotional closers. The band felt like a full band again, and most of the results here were quite enjoyable.
You're guilty of the same. Too sick to be ashamed. You want to point your finger, but there's no one else to blame. You're guilty of the same. Too sick to be ashamed. You want to point your finger.
Though I don't fully agree with my initial review of this album, I still have a lot of love for The Hunting Party. It was kind of a middle finger to an industry that had gone soft, in the words of Mike Shinoda. Funny, considering what came after this. Anyways, this was a great hard rock record with some real fire to its punch, and some unexpected guests like Tom Morello on Drawbar and Raw Kim on the mind-bendingly great Guilty All the Same. They toyed with punk rock energy on The Roaring War, mellowed out and made us think with A Line in the Sand, and showed Bennington still possessed a menacing scream on the opener Keys to the Kingdom. Even though some of the tracks do fall into a bit more of a bland territory, especially as I've listened to this album more and don't always merit repeated listens, this is a very well assembled record that plays smoothly from start to finish. It's more raw than anything else that they've ever done as a whole, and made fans clamoring for more guitars shut up. Well, at least for a few more years.
Get down and obey every word. Steady getting mine if you haven't yet heard. Wanna take what I got, don't be absurd. Don't fight the power, nobody gets hurt. If you haven't heard yet, then I'm letting you know there ain't shit we don't run when the guns unload.
Shaken, not stirred. That's the mold of 1,000 Suns, and the glue keeping it all together with the keen eye of each member of the band. Let me be totally transparent here. As an 18-year-old back in the day, loving Meteora, Hybrid Theory, I hated this album whenever it dropped in the fall of 2010. Oh man, did I detest this thing. In fact, I filmed a video about me hating it that never got released on my channel, and thank God it didn't. I did a 180 in terms of how I felt about this LP. I grew up, I paid attention, and I wised up to the fact that this wasn't just electronic nonsense. It was immensely layered and very intelligent. On this album you'll find samples of political speeches and how they switched up their instrumentation approach and played with these ambient interludes. And even the album title in and of itself is war-based. It's a chaotic record that many are gonna pass on and still do to this day just because it doesn't feature their classic sound. 1,000 Suns actually refers to an atomic bomb going off, with scientists saying that it could be brighter than the light of 1,000 suns. Burning in the Skies, The Catalyst, Iridescent. They all refer to this theme, and I do love that about the album, the fact that Linkin Park actually pulled off a great concept record. If you listen closely, you'll appreciate it more. There's subtle references to other songs on the record, skilled rapping, and even turntables that some just don't think exist here. They do, and a commendable crossbreed of what they once were and who they are now.
Now I find myself in question.
They point the finger at me again.
Guilty by association.
You point the finger at me again.
I wanna run away, never say goodbye. I wanna know the truth instead of wondering why.
To say it's a close race between this and my number one pick just isn't doing it justice. At this point, you can barely see the gap separating the two. But that gap is there ever so slightly, so Hybrid Theory still lands at number 2 on this album ranked list. The 2000s were a magical time in music and creativity, and tell me I'm stuck in a mindset or a phase all you want, but music just doesn't have the impact records like this did at that time. Music used to have variety and nuance, appeal to different crowds and that sort of thing, but I guess I'll save the majority of that speech for a different video. Though there are plenty of reissues and differing editions, the original 12 songs speak loudly for themselves as a strong force, from the anger and angst to the more mellow. Teens at that time and even now still feel connected with those recurring themes of sadness and depression that they were really channeling here. Something that actually felt genuine in place of the boy bands and other glamorous pop stars that were coming up at the time. With You pushes the idea of being there for someone even though you know they wouldn't do the same for you, broken promises, recurring themes like that, chugging along with the choppy nu metal guitar we eventually grew to know this band for. Runaway and By Myself showed an electric connectivity between songs, and hell, even the slower song In the End fascinates with its washed out guitars and well-paced rap. What I'm getting at is that even though many elitists call Linkin Park the cheesiest band on the planet, I see them as being very, very enjoyable. Their debut record went diamond. That's 10 million sales in the US for a reason. It resonated with the masses and is still remembered to this day.
Yo, peep the style and the kids checking for it. The number one question is how could you ignore it? We drop right back in the cut over basement tracks with raps that got you backing this up like rewind that. We're just rolling with the rhythm. Rise from the ashes of stylistic division. With these non-stop lyrics of life living, not to be forgotten, but still unforgiven.
I could talk for hours about Meteora and the impact it had on me as a youngster, but instead I'll sum it up with a brief overview of why I personally feel this stands at number 1 as their best album. Every song was a hit without even trying. Even the deep cuts felt that way. To this day, it remains the most successful album from the alternative rock charts of all time, racking up 4 number 1 hits on just one album. I can still vividly remember whatever it felt like hearing those opening notes and the glass shattering for the very first time whenever my friend played Meteora for me, and how that transitions perfectly into the turntable and guitar tornado that is Don't Stay, which remains a top favorite of mine to this very day. I was the typical misunderstood teen with very strict parents, so naturally this music helped vent a lot of my frustrations with them and the world around me. The band did an excellent job of building on the sound that they found with Hybrid Theory, keeping the energy even higher octane this time as they blended the loud scratching from Han and layered riffs from Delson. This is the last album where I feel we truly got the perfect blend of Mike Shinoda rapping and Chester Bennington singing and screaming. They just nailed it here. The unforgettable rap on single Faint and the unique vision of the underrated Jim Nobody's Listening, and of course the passionate swirl of synthesizers and Chester's angst on Numb, this record still has me hooked all these years later. I actually got to meet Linkin Park in 2014, and I have my CD copy of Meteora signed by all the members of the band. Truly a special item for my collection. That's it for this episode of Rank, guys. I hope you enjoyed seeing my ranking of the Linkin Park studio albums. Let me know what you thought of the list in the comment section down below, and be sure to leave a like on the video while you're here. And if you're able to, remember, these videos are a lot of work to assemble, especially the ranked series and other in-depth series that I do on this channel and beyond ARTV. If you're able to support my endeavors on a monthly basis, my Patreon is linked in the description down below, or else you can support in just a second by clicking that annotation on screen. My Patreon is right over there in the corner if you would like to see all of the Linkin Park videos that I have done, all of the Linkin Park themed ones. They're in a playlist right here for you. If you'd like to see my One More Light review, that is right here. And other than that, I'll see you very soon for more videos right here on ARTV.